On September 7, 1876, a group of 8 men from the James Younger gang rode into the town of Northfield, Minnesota, with the intent of carrying out a bold daylight bank robbery. Jesse James, Bob Younger, and Charlie Pitts entered the bank, while Frank James, Cole Younger, Jim Younger, Clel Miller, and Bill Chadwell remained outside to keep watch and create a commotion in the streets, preventing people from leaving buildings. They assumed that the townspeople would be passive and unwilling to defend the bank, but they miscalculated. At every turn, they encountered resistance, from a bank teller refusing to open the safe to armed townspeople using rifles from hardware stores to engage in gunfire with the robbers. Inside the bank, the robbers killed Joseph Haywood, an assistant bank cashier, because he wouldn't cooperate. In the streets, Nicholas Gustafson, a recent immigrant from Norway, was shot in the head. It's possible he didn't understand the warnings in English to clear the street, or perhaps he mistook the chaos for part of a Wild West show scheduled for that evening. The townspeople fought back, reportedly injuring all the gang members at some point. Anselm R. Manning from the Siver building shot and killed Bill Chadwell. Across from the bank, medical student Henry Wheeler took aim from the 3rd floor of the Dampier House Hotel, ultimately killing Clel Miller. The 6 surviving robbers left with a haul of $26.10, mostly in rolls of nickels. This fell significantly short of the thousands of dollars they expected to get from the bank staff. The gang had read that access to the vault was impeded by a time lock. However, the lock was present, but it hadn't been activated. Had the gang attempted to open the vault on their own, they could have easily made off with $17,000 to $18,000. For a fortnight, the gang cautiously navigated the Minnesota backcountry, hounded by posses and scouts attempting to reach Missouri. Near Mankato, the men divided into 2 groups. The James brothers headed back to Missouri, but the Youngers and Pitts faced misfortune at Hanskaslow near LaSalle, Minnesota, on September 21. In the ensuing gunfight, Charlie Pitts lost his life, and the Youngers were apprehended. Following the robbery, photographs were taken of Miller and Chadwell's bodies for future identification, and they were laid to rest. Recent discussions have sparked curiosity about the fate of these men's remains. One account suggests that they were interred in the paupers section of the Northfield Cemetery. However, another narrative contends that Clel Miller's father arrived in Northfield, claimed his son's body, and transported it for burial in Muddy Fork Cemetery in Kearney, Missouri. There's also a possibility that Henry Wheeler took one or both of the bodies to Ann Arbor, Michigan, for dissection. Upon learning of this, Miller's father or brother journeyed to claim the body. After the dissection, the remains became unidentifiable. Allegedly, Wheeler retained Miller's body, the one he had shot during the robbery. The Miller family received a body, potentially Chadwell's, for burial in Missouri. Wheeler meticulously prepared the skeleton and brought it with him to Grand Forks, North Dakota, where he established a medical practice. Upon his retirement in 1923, Wheeler generously donated the skeleton to a local Odd Fellows Lodge. It was reported that Wheeler insisted the skeleton belonged to Miller. In the 1980s, the skeleton was auctioned and acquired by a private individual. The world was vastly different in those times. Public hangings, whether legal or carried out by vigilantes, were public spectacles. Crowds would gather around the bodies, eager to capture a photograph. When someone died, especially in a notable event like a shootout, pictures of the deceased were taken and sold as keepsakes. It was not uncommon for people to cut pieces of clothing or even body parts from the deceased as souvenirs. Outlaw bodies were sometimes displayed as a grim reminder that crime does not pay. Doctors might take bodies for purposes like dissection, skeletal preparation, or even tanning the skin to make shoes or bags. Such practices, considered ghoulish, cruel, or indecent by today's standards, were accepted in that era. In the broader context of the outlaw era in the Midwest, Clel Miller has become a minor footnote. An outlaw from the James gang shot dead by a medical student during a bank robbery in Northfield, Missouri. What series of events led him to that point? Clay County, Missouri comprises the northern bank of the Missouri River. This region was primarily settled by families from Kentucky and Tennessee, maintaining cultural ties to the South, including the institution of slavery. The connection was so strong that the Missouri River Valley earned the moniker Little Dixie. The area could be insular, given that many families had migrated to Missouri from the same communities in Kentucky and Tennessee. The James, Height, and Miller families all resided in the community of Danville, Kentucky, before relocating to Missouri. Clel's parents were Moses W. and Emmeline Thurmond Miller. He was born Cleland Cleander Miller on December 15, 1849. Growing to a height of about 5 feet 8 inches with dark auburn hair, Clel was known for his fun-loving nature, often seen as the clown of the group. Around the age of 5, the conflict over slavery erupted in Kansas territory. Guerrilla bands, including pro-slavery Missourians, bushwhackers or border ruffians, and anti-slavery Northerners, Jayhawkers, engaged in skirmishes along the Missouri-Kansas border. The atmosphere was lawless and harsh. When Clel was around 14 years old, he ran away and joined Bloody Bill Anderson's Confederate guerrilla band. In his brief 3-day service for the Confederacy, he participated in just one battle and was captured in the skirmish at present-day Orick, Missouri, which resulted in Anderson's death. Possibly due to his young age, Clel was not immediately executed but instead taken to St. Louis and confined in the Gratiot Street prison. His father traveled to St. Louis to secure Clel's release. To achieve this, they had to claim that they were a family supportive of the Union and that Clel had never taken up arms against the federal government. It was a bit of a stretch. Following this, Clel seemingly returned to the family farm. In the 1870 census, he is recorded with his family and his occupation is noted as a farmer. It appears he joined forces with the James and Youngers around 1871. He faced arrest for his involvement in the June 3, 1871, Corydon, Iowa Okobock Bank robbery, but was acquitted in a jury trial. During the trial, he asserted that he wasn't a James Gang member but might as well join them since his reputation had been so damaged. He continued to participate in a series of robberies and killings with the James Gang until that fateful day in September 1876. Clel had endured 2 shotgun blasts from Elias Stacy's shotgun, one to the face and a second in the back. The initial shot knocked Miller out of the saddle, but he managed to remount before being struck by the second shot. Wheeler's shot, hitting just below the left shoulder, proved to be the fatal blow. The recent surge in interest surrounding Clel Miller has led to various comparisons of his body, the Grand Forks Oddfellow skeleton, and his wounds. One of these comparisons vividly illustrates that Wheeler's rifle shot likely hit Miller in his left subclavian artery, a branch directly off the aorta. With the heart pumping a significant amount of blood out of the artery, Miller probably bled out within minutes. Even with proper first aid, this remains a fatal wound. Cole Younger and Charlie Pitts attempted to get Clel to a horse, but the visible amount of blood on Miller convinced the others that he was dead. Miller's death profoundly impacted the gang, making it clear to all of them that they were defeated and fortunate to escape. Some witnesses recounted that, after the others had departed, Miller attempted to rise to his hands and knees before collapsing dead. From the bank entry until this moment, only 7 minutes had elapsed. Following Clel's death, the Miller family's ties with the James didn't come to an end, whether that was a voluntary choice or not. After losing the core of their gang, Jesse and Frank regrouped, assembling a new crew after laying low for a while. Ed Miller joined the ranks alongside Clarence and Woodhite, James's cousins, Charlie Ford, Dick Little, and others. However, these men didn't match the caliber of the Youngers. They lacked the authoritative presence of Cole Younger for discipline, and Frank began losing interest in the outlaw lifestyle. The later version of the gang was marred by issues like drinking, loose lips, internal conflicts, and growing paranoia. Depending on who you consult, Ed Miller may have started talking too much about the Kansas City Fair robbery or a planned heist. In 1881, Ed Miller and Jesse James rode off together, but only Jesse returned. Kansas City newspapers reported Ed Miller's death in October 1881. For what it's worth, the Miller family asserts that Jesse and Ed faked Ed's death, allowing him to leave the outlaw life and spend his remaining days in Tennessee. As for the location, Clel Miller's memorial marker is situated in Muddy Fork Cemetery on MO 33, just north of Kearney, Missouri. He shares the marker with his father and sister. Jesse James's grave is located down the road from Muddy Fork in Matt Olivet Cemetery.